Right, Animated at Tech Part 2 of this tone arm assembly. So now I've put this back together, you'll see in one of my previous videos on how to calibrate these. So I've screwed it in, starting at number 1 on your height marker until it clicks in place. Wind it down to 0. Once it's at 0, wind that into the bottom base as far as it'll go. Once it's in as far as it'll go, then hold the number bezel and move your base so that this point where the opening is goes from there twice round. So it's once, twice. If it's only one, when you come to adjust your height, it won't go back down to 0, it'll only stop at half. I've had this issue before, so move that round so that your spacing is opposite that peg, so it's near this first hole, and that's set up ready to receive your tone arm again now. So we'll do everything that we did before but in reverse now. So you get your tone arm freshly repaired, or if you haven't done out with it, just putting it back in. So your wires go through that triangle hole there. You see how they go through that triangle hole, not the centre hole like some people do. Can't state that enough. So that locks back into its seating. Put your locking bar down and you'll see from the bottom your wires come through the triangle hole. If they come through here, it traps against that bottom bearing mount and it causes tracking issues. So always through that triangle, always. Right, so now I'm going to put these two long fine thread screws back in. I'll start with that one just because it's easiest to get to. Wind it in. Once it's down and seated, just nip it up. Don't go mad, it's only aluminium and you'll strip it. Same again with your second one. So you get your second one in there, get your screwdriver in, wind it in. No need for power tools on these, just hand screwdrivers are sufficient. Just nip it up and say don't go too mad with it because it's only aluminium. So making sure that that's at 0, turn it over, and now you want to be back onto your mounting, onto your workstation. Before you do, set your anti-skate to half, 0.5. So that's back on my base now. So now I need this bit. This spring here, when you turn it over and you look through from the other side, there's your anti-skate adjust. The thin spring should be in line with this hole here. I don't know if you can just about see it there. You see it moving? So that wants to be in line with that hole or nearabouts. So when you put this back onto your base, thread your wires back through your centre hole, and as you lower it down over that peg and line it back up, that spring should be against that peg on the bottom of your tone arm. If it's not, just adjust the cog a little bit with a small screwdriver and just drop it into place. And say, I've done this on a previous video. So now just to check it, that's back in. I'm just holding it down in place. Turn your anti-skate to 0 and then put it back to that side so you can see the spring, and you turn it until that spring touches that peg. Once it touches that peg, make sure that that's at half. If not, readjust it. I can see it's not, it wants to come back a little bit. So you can see how far off it is. It's just a fraction. So what you do then, just lift that back up with that still set at half and just notch that cog round a little bit and put it back down. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times sometimes. So back to 0 and then just wind it round till it touches, and it's at 0.5 when it touches. Once you know that's right, you need a screw with a flange. Came out of it, and that goes in there. And then if you remember, I was telling you about a longer screw rather than a shorter one. It should be in your tube somewhere. Just there. So I've got my long one. Helps if you've got a magnetic screwdriver. And screw that one in. That's set, that's recalibrated. That's calibrated your base now. That's at 0. That's set so it's in line with your locking peg. So now what I like to do is get the height adjusts the tonearm lifting spring mechanism and put that in. So you want to make sure that that spring is in that position, not like that or like that. It needs to be like that. So as you put it in, drop your spring into there and locate it on that little peg, and that bit will sit on that peg, and this will sit on these two and this peg. And you get your 2 small silver screws, or might be yellowy colour, sometimes they are. Screw them in. Don't over tighten them, it's only plastic. Just enough to hold it tightly without going too mad. So you screw that in and just nip it up, that's it, done. So that's in now. You'll know when it's in properly because it'll seat down properly. If not, then you'll have to readjust it. So now, making sure that my base is still at 0 or beyond 0, rather than don't go minus, go plus, if anything. You want to put this bit on. Now your peg goes through there, and this peg falls through that hole. So in it goes. Sometimes you might need to adjust the base just so it locates on these 2 pegs. I'll be lucky it's done it straight away without having to adjust it. Then your 2 screws with your flanges. You'll know which ones they are because they've got like a little flange on them. One at either side. Same applies with all screws in a Technics. Don't go mad over tightening them because they'll either strip or snap, and you don't want that because getting the screws for them can be a nightmare. So now you need your little brass washer. Wherever it's disappeared to, there it is. Your little brass coloured washer. Put it over that peg. And then you need your circlip. Well, it's not actually, it's called an E-clip if you're looking for them on eBay or anywhere. Little E-clip. I like to grip mine in a pair of wire snips just to locate it into its groove, and then push against it and it'll click into place. That stops that coming off. So now when you undo your base, it'll go to 6 and it won't keep winding, won't wind off, and it'll also go right down to 0. It sometimes goes beyond 0. It's just the way they were manufactured. So that's that. That's all back together and all calibrated up. So now I want to turn it over. Turn it over. I'll start with this little tonearm lever, and I'll push it back into the hole, keeping that bit flat as I'm doing it, but wiggling it from side to side as I'm pushing. So it just feeds back into that little hole in there in your mechanism. You'll know when it's done. It won't push any further, and you can see it's quite stationary there. So now next bit, unlock it, get your lifting mechanism, lift your tonearm up, feed that in, little peg in this hole. Some of them you'll find have a plastic bar here. This is usually on the newer models. On the older ones it was a little metal peg. But locate it in that hole, locate your spring and your screw back over there. Push this bit down, and as you push it down, you'll see that the screw protrudes up. You see it sticking up there? As it sticks up, small screwdriver, wind it down. Don't go right down to the bottom, because if you go right down to the bottom, this is what happens. You wind it right down and you let go, it doesn't reach this. So it doesn't do anything. It lifts up and down, but it doesn't actually make contact with the tone arm. So what you want to do is, you could do it in the up position, doesn't matter. Push it down with your spring again and back that screw off 4 or 5 turns. Just so that when you do the tone arm lift, it just clears that rest. Don't have to clear it by loads. Sometimes if it's too high, just wind it back down a couple of turns. Just so it clears it, so it's not catching it. You see, when it's down, it catches it. When it's up, it clears it. That's all it needs to do, just clear it. And so that's like that. Sometimes these locks become weak and don't click back on. Sometimes you can get away with turning it a little bit, but that loosens the screw and over time they come loose. So you can hear it click there. If you want to tighten it up, don't go mad, but if you get a heat gun, put the peg in that position, in the closed position, put a bit of pressure on it and warm it up gently. You'll feel it start to move when you pressure your finger. Once it moves a little bit, that's it. That's all you need, just a bit of heat there. Let it cool down whilst you've got the pressure on it. So now, when I go to lock it, you'll see that when I lock it, it's proper seated lock now. It's not loose, whereas before it was quite slack. That's all it was, just a little bit of tension there. It's just sprained over time. They all do it. I say sometimes they come loose, and that can be the cause of it as well. So that's that back together. So now we'll go into reverse mode again. Turn it upside down. I'll remove this screw here that I've saved there, so I didn't get it mixed up with any other screws. Sometimes they are different. Sometimes I've got a point on them, like a self tapper. Get my cables back where I left them. As I say, I've said in previous video, this one's been modified by somebody before. They've put new cables on. The Van Damme cables are not overkeying them, they're too thick, and they've had to strip them down and coat them with heat shrink. You can see how they've heat shrunk it from a fat cable down to a thinner cable. If you get the right cables, you shouldn't need to do that. So, long screw in the small hole, and that locates in this hole here. So locate it in there, and then this hole locates where you've just taken that screw out of. You get your screw again, put that screw in there. Like I said before, don't go overboard with it, it's only plastic. Just slightly nip it up so it's not going to move. Same with that, nip it up, done. Now this cable here that goes to your pitch, which has the tone arm to your deck top, just put it down side of that. It just goes down side there and tucks away at that side there. And then it's just a case of soldering your wires back on, which is a 2-minute job once you get your soldering iron set up. So it's black first, if you're working from this way, same way as I'm doing it here. So the black goes next to the earth. Then it's green, but sometimes on newer decks it's brown. So it's either green or brown in the second one. And this next bit's quite easy because it's red and it goes to R. You'll see sometimes on the circuit board it says R. So red to R. And then white to L. That's your left and right balance. So white to L. And then your blue wire goes to the last one, which is the earth for your left hand channel. And that's them all soldered back on, nice and neat. And once you've done that, you bring your plate back down and it goes, so as you're looking at it face on so that the arm's facing you, that hole onto that peg and that hole onto that peg, and that should be horizontal to the way you're looking at it. Small black screws. Oh, drop that. So put your base plate screws in first. That secures it all, keeps it all safe. Them two in. And you get your cable clamp, which is this bit, this little bit first, and that goes that way around. So as you're looking at your tone arm tube towards you, that goes that way. So you push that on and then you turn your cables over through that little notch, so you've got it in that position. It's hard to do and film at the same time as this. So in that position, then you get your cable clamp cover, and you'll see it's got a cutout one side and a blank side. The blank side goes to this side, the cutout goes to the opposite side to trap the cables. As you see, and that goes like that. Push it down, sometimes they click, sometimes they don't. Screw, long screw with a flange, nip it up, same again, don't go overboard, no need to go mad with it, and that's that. And then just as a quick check, just make sure that it goes down to 0 and then goes all the way up to 6 to make sure that the cables aren't trapped anywhere, like in here. Sometimes if you've I've seen it where they've put the cable tie on the wrong way and the little square bit of the cable tie gets stuck between it and it doesn't go down far enough. So always check it before you put it back in deck. That goes to 0, that's your lock, and that's done. And that's how you calibrate and strip a tone arm. Thanks for watching. Any questions, drop me a comment or drop me a message on my Facebook at Deck Tech, or if you're on Instagram, check out my Instagram page, Deck Tech 2020. Feel free to message me on any of them formats if you've got any queries or you want anything doing. I'm based in just outside of Leeds in West Yorkshire, UK. I do get them shipped from all over UK and abroad. Parts that need doing, tone arms. This one's come from down south somewhere. But anything like that, modifications, repairs, servicing, drop me a message and I'll help out as much as I can. Thanks for watching.